Hello, and welcome back to Sleeping Gift. Tonight, allow me to share a story to accompany you as you drift off to sleep. Before we go any further, take a slow and gentle breath. Let the calm air fill your chest, then slowly exhale. Release every burden you have been carrying. Let your imagination gently guide you into this story. Now, let's begin the story. Breathe in, breathe out, and let me take you away for a moment into a story. A silent night by the fireplace, sleep story, anxiety relief, and deep calm. Before we enter this story, take a deep breath in and exhale slowly. Now, it is time for us to step into this journey. The stone house rests quietly beneath a sky that has already settled into night, as if the evening had arrived gently and then decided to stay without announcement, without any need to be noticed. The walls, thick and cool, hold the memory of the day's fading warmth, and within them, the air feels still, patient, and softly contained. Inside, a single room is lit by the steady glow of a fireplace. The flames move in slow, careful shapes, rising and folding into themselves, never hurried, never sharp. Their light leans against the stone, painting it in soft amber tones that shift just slightly with each breath of heat. Shadows gather in the corners, not as something to fear, but as something that simply belongs, as natural as the quiet itself. A chair rests near the fire, its surface worn smooth by time and use. A folded blanket lies draped across one arm, its fabric soft and familiar, carrying a quiet warmth even before it is touched. The floor beneath is steady, grounded, each wooden plank holding its place without a sound. There is a clock somewhere in the room, not immediately visible, but present in the gentle rhythm it offers. Tick, pause, tick, pause. Each moment spaced evenly, like a slow and steady breath that does not ask for attention, only for quiet acknowledgement. Near the window, the night presses lightly against the glass. There is no urgency in the wind, only a soft movement, like a distant exhale brushing past the edges of the house. The window holds it all at a distance, allowing only the faintest whisper to pass through, barely enough to stir the air. The fire continues its quiet work. A small log shifts inward, settling deeper into the bed of embers, and a brief flicker rises before returning to its gentle rhythm. There is no rush in its burning. Each flame takes its time, consuming slowly, releasing warmth in a way that feels almost thoughtful. The room does not ask for anything. It does not demand movement or sound. It simply exists, holding space in a way that feels complete. The chair remains where it is, angled just enough to face the fire. The blanket waits, undisturbed. The clock continues its patient counting, and the light, always the light, moves softly across the surfaces, never staying in one place for too long, yet never truly leaving. If one were to sit here, they might notice how the warmth gathers around them, how it settles into their hands, their shoulders, the quiet spaces between breaths. They might notice how the silence is not empty, but full of small, steady things that continue without effort. The fire breathes in its own way. The clock answers in its rhythm. The night outside listens, unmoving. And slowly, almost without being aware of it, the body would begin to match this pace. The shoulders would lower just slightly. The breath would lengthen just a little more with each inhale, each exhale, not forced, not guided, just happening as naturally as the flame rising and falling before the hearth. Nothing changes, and yet something softens. The room holds this softness carefully, like a quiet promise that there is no need to hurry, no need to think beyond this moment. Only the fire, the stone, the faint wind, and the slow, steady passing of time. And in that stillness, the night continues, unbroken, gentle, and wide. The fire continues its slow, steady movement, and the room remains unchanged in all the ways that matter, holding its quiet shape as if it has always been this way and always will be. The light still leans against the stone walls, soft and amber, drifting gently across the uneven surfaces, tracing the small textures without ever lingering too long. The chair near the hearth waits in the same patient way, its presence steady and certain. When someone finally settles into it, the movement is unhurried, almost blending into the stillness rather than interrupting it. The wood beneath shifts just slightly, a soft acknowledgement, and then becomes still again. The blanket is lifted slowly and rests across the lap, its weight light but comforting, its surface smooth against the hands. Fingers move across the fabric without purpose, only noticing, only feeling. The warmth from the fire begins to gather more fully now, touching the edges of the blanket, slipping into the quiet spaces between threads. The clock continues. Tick, pause, tick, pause. It does not change its pace, not even for a moment. It simply continues, marking time in a way that feels less like counting and more like breathing. The rhythm becomes familiar quickly, as if it has always been known. Near the window, the faint movement of the wind returns in small intervals. It does not press, it does not call for attention. It simply brushes along the outside, a soft passing presence that comes and goes without leaving a trace. A small sound emerges from the fire, a quiet settling, a shift in the wood as it lowers into the glowing bed beneath. The flames respond in a gentle flicker, rising a little higher for a moment, then easing back as if they, too, are following a pattern that does not need to be understood. Hands rest now, still on the blanket. Breath begins to match the room without effort. Inhale, slow and quiet. Exhale, just as soft. Again, inhale, steady. Exhale, longer now, but not by much. The body does not need to think about it. The rhythm is already there, woven into the space, carried by the fire, echoed by the clock, held by the stone. Nothing asks to be done. There is only a small movement now and then, a shift of fingers, a slight adjustment in the chair, the subtle rise and fall of the chest. These movements repeat, gently, without purpose, like the slow return of waves that never quite reach the shore. The fire offers its warmth again and again, without hesitation. The light shifts again and again, without change. The clock continues its quiet measure. Tick, pause, tick, pause. The room begins to feel even more settled, as if it is gently closing in around its own calm, not in a way that confines, but in a way that protects. The outside world feels distant now, not gone, but softened, held just beyond the reach of the window. A breath comes in, a breath moves out, the same as before, the same as always. And with each passing moment, the repetition becomes more comforting, more certain. There is no need to look for anything new. Everything that is needed is already here, repeating in the same quiet way. The fire glows. The clock speaks softly. The wind passes by. The blanket rests. The chair holds. And the night, wide and steady, continues to unfold without ever asking to be noticed. The warmth from the fire settles deeper into the room now, not stronger, not brighter, but quieter, as if it has found its place and no longer needs to reach outward. The flames move more slowly than before, their shapes softer, their edges less defined, rising and folding back into the gentle glow beneath. The chair holds its shape around the body, steady and familiar, as though it has learned the exact way to support without needing to adjust. The blanket rests more completely now, its weight no longer something to notice, but something that simply is, like the air, like the light. Hands remain still, fingers no longer trace the fabric. They rest, and in that resting, there is a small kind of quiet that deepens without effort. The clock continues, unchanged. Tick, pause, tick, pause. Each moment arrives just as softly as the last, and just as softly it passes. The space between each sound feels wider now, not because it has changed, but because the listening has softened, stretched, and settled into it. Near the window, the faint movement of the wind returns again, though it feels even more distant now, like something remembered rather than something heard. The glass holds the night in place, and the night remains still, without urgency, without need. A small ember shifts within the fire. It glows briefly, a quiet orange deepening into a softer red, and then it rests again, folding into the warmth that surrounds it. The wood no longer cracks as often. The sounds have become fewer, and when they do come, they are gentle, almost like the room breathing on its own. Breath continues. Inhale, slow, unbroken. Exhale, even softer. Again, the rise of the chest is smaller now, the fall more complete. There is no need to take in more than what is already enough. The rhythm has become something that simply happens, something that belongs to the space as much as the fire and the clock. The light flickers across the stone, but the movement is slower, as if it too has grown tired of shifting and would rather remain in place. The shadows no longer move as much. They stay close to where they are, settled into corners, quiet and still. There is a sense, faint and gentle, that the room is becoming smaller, not in its size, but in its feeling, as if everything unnecessary has quietly stepped away, leaving only what matters. The chair, the blanket, the fire, the clock, the window, and the soft, steady presence of breath. A slight movement returns for a moment, a small adjustment of the shoulders, a deeper settling into the chair. But even that fades quickly, as if the body remembers there is nowhere else it needs to be. Nothing calls for attention. Nothing asks to be changed. Even the fire, which once danced a little more freely, now moves with a slower rhythm, its flames shorter, its glow more constant than shifting. The clock continues its patient rhythm. Tick, pause, tick, pause. And the space between each sound feels softer still. The night remains beyond the glass, unchanged, unmoving, a quiet companion that does not need to come closer to be felt. And inside, everything continues in the same gentle pattern. Breath in, breath out, light and shadow, warmth and stillness, again and again and again. The room holds its quiet shape, unchanged, as if it has gently settled into itself and found no reason to move beyond what is already enough. The fire remains low and steady now, its glow softer, more even, as though the flames have grown content with simply resting where they are. Light drifts across the stone walls in a slow, almost unnoticeable way, brushing over the small textures, the uneven edges, the faint lines that have always been there. Nothing new appears, and yet the familiar details seem to soften, as if they're being remembered rather than seen. The chair continues to hold without effort. The blanket remains warm, its surface smooth, its edges resting quietly against still hands. There's no movement there now, no tracing of fabrics, no adjusting, only the quiet presence of weight, of warmth, of something that stays. The clock continues. Tick, pause, tick, pause. Its rhythm does not change, but it feels further away now, as though the sound travels a longer path before it is noticed. Each tick arrives gently, and each pause stretches just enough to hold a moment of stillness before the next. Breath moves in the same slow pattern. Inhale, soft and steady. Exhale, slower still. Again. The body follows this rhythm without thought, without intention. It simply continues, the way the fire continues, the way the night continues. A faint memory drifts in, not as a clear picture, not as something that asks to be understood, but as a soft impression. The feeling of another quiet evening, perhaps, in this same room, or somewhere very much like it. The same warmth, the same steady light, the same sense of time moving without urgency. It does not stay long. It does not need to. It simply passes through, like the faint movement of wind outside the window, touching lightly and then fading back into the stillness. The fire shifts again, but only slightly. A small ember glows brighter for a moment, then dims, as if it has completed something without needing to show it. The flames rise just a little, then settle again, returning to their quiet, steady shape. The room does not react. It remains as it is. The shadows no longer stretch or move. They rest fully now, held in place by the dimmer light. The corners feel deeper, but not darker in a way that matters. Only quieter. Another faint memory brushes past, softer than the last. The sense of hands warming near a fire. The quiet sound of a chair in another time. Another evening that feels very much the same. It is not important when it happened. It is not important where. It is only a feeling. And then it fades. The clock continues. Tick, pause, tick, pause. The sound becomes part of the space, no longer separate, no longer something to notice on its own. It blends with the breath, with the fire, with the quiet presence of everything that remains. The window holds the night in its stillness. No movement presses against it now. Even the wind seems to have softened into something barely there. Something that only exists if one listens closely. And even then, it may simply be imagined. The room grows more still. Not empty, just still. Breath continues. Inhale, gentle. Exhale, longer, softer. Again, the warmth from the fire lingers, but it no longer spreads. It rests close to where it began, gathering near the hearth, near the chair, near the quiet center of the room. Everything remains. Everything softens, and the night, wide and patient, continues without end. The silence in the room deepens, not by removing anything, but by gently softening what remains, until it all begins to blend together like layers of quiet resting one upon another. The fire no longer reaches upward in clear shapes. It glows low, steady, a soft bed of embers breathing faint warmth into the air. The light has changed. It no longer flickers in noticeable ways. It rests, dim and even, touching only the nearest surfaces. The stone walls hold that faint glow without reflecting much back, as though they, too, are settling into rest. The chair remains still. The blanket remains warm. The hands remain quiet. There is no movement now except for breath. Inhale, slow, shallow, effortless. Exhale, longer, softer, almost fading at the end. Again, each breath seems to arrive with less sound, less motion, as if it is becoming part of the stillness rather than something moving through it. The chest rises only slightly. The shoulders no longer shift. The body rests fully into the support beneath it. The clock continues its gentle rhythm, though it feels further away now, almost as if it has moved behind the walls or deeper into the space where sound becomes memory. Tick, pause, tick, pause. The pauses stretch wider, or perhaps the listening stretches wider, allowing each moment to rest more completely before the next begins. The fire releases a quiet warmth that no longer spreads outward. It gathers close to itself like a small, steady heart at the center of the room. Now and then, A faint glow deepens and softens again, a slow pulse that mirrors the rhythm of breath. There is no longer any need to adjust, to shift, to move. Everything has already found its place. The window stands unchanged, holding the night in a quiet frame. There is no wind now, or if there is, it no longer makes itself known. The glass feels like a boundary between two equally still worlds, inside and outside, both resting, both silent. Breath continues. Inhale, barely more than a presence. Exhale, almost dissolving into nothing. Again, the difference between one breath and the next becomes softer, less distinct, as if they are not separate moments, but part of a single, continuous motion that does not begin or end. A small sound comes from the fire, so faint it might almost be imagined a soft settling, like something releasing its final bit of tension. The embers shift slightly, then become still again. The room does not change. It only grows quieter. Even the idea of time begins to soften here. The ticking of the clock remains, but it no longer marks anything that needs to be followed. It simply exists, like a distant echo that repeats without urgency. The warmth, the dim light, the stillness, they begin to feel less like separate things and more like one gentle presence filling the space. Breath becomes part of that presence. The body becomes part of that presence. The chair, the blanket, the fire, all part of the same quiet whole. Inhale, soft. Exhale, softer. Again, nothing interrupts. Nothing shifts. Nothing asks to be noticed. And in that deepening quiet, the room holds everything gently, as if cradling the night itself, allowing it to rest without end. The room remains as it is, and yet it feels softer still, as though each surface, each small presence within it, has gently released the last trace of effort and now rests fully in place. The fire is no longer a flame, not in the way it once was. It is a quiet gathering of embers, dim and steady, holding a warmth that breathes in the faintest way. The glow rests low. It does not reach far. It does not need to. The stone around the hearth absorbs the light rather than reflecting it, and the edges of the room begin to fade into a soft, unbroken shadow that feels less like darkness and more like a continuation of rest. The chair holds without being felt. The blanket rests without being noticed. The hands remain where they are, quiet, still, as though they have always been this way. Breath continues. Inhale, a small and gentle rise. Exhale, a slow and quiet fall. Again, the rhythm remains, but it is softer now, less defined, as if each breath blends into the next without any clear edge between them. It is no longer something to follow. It simply is. The clock continues its patient motion. Tick, pause, tick, pause. But the sound is distant now, so distant it feels like something remembered rather than heard. The pauses stretch into the quiet, and the quiet holds them without effort. The embers shift, barely. A soft glow deepens, then eases again, like a slow pulse that does not seek attention. There is no crackling now, no movement of flame, only the quiet presence of warmth that lingers close to the hearth. The window remains unchanged. Beyond it, the night is still, vast, and unmoving, yet it no longer feels separate from the room. The boundary between inside and outside softens, as if both share the same quiet breath. A faint repetition begins to settle into the space. The glow of the embers, the rise of breath, the distant tick, the stillness of the walls. Again, the glow of the embers, the rise of breath, the distant tick, the stillness of the walls. Again, each element returns in the same gentle way, not repeating exactly, but close enough that it feels familiar, close enough that it does not need to be noticed. The body remains at rest. There is no shifting now, no adjustment, only the steady presence of being held by the chair, by the warmth, by the quiet itself. Breath continues. Inhale, soft. Exhale, softer. Again, the difference between the body and the room begins to feel less clear, as though the warmth of the embers extends just enough to meet the quiet stillness of everything else, and the two become one gentle, continuous space. The clock continues, though it is barely there now. Tick, pause, tick, pause, or perhaps only the memory of it remains. The embers glow, the breath moves, the stillness whole. Again, the embers glow, the breath moves, the stillness whole. Again, nothing enters, nothing leaves. Everything remains, gently repeating, gently resting, as the night deepens without changing, and the room, in its quiet way, continues to soften into itself. The room remains, though it now feels as if it is resting within itself, each small part settled so completely that nothing stands apart from anything else. The embers in the hearth glow faintly, their light now a low and steady presence, barely reaching beyond the stones that cradle them. The warmth lingers close. It does not travel far. It stays where it is, gentle and contained. The chair holds in silence. The blanket rests in silence. The hands remain still, their presence soft, almost like a memory of where they have been placed. Breath continues. Inhale, light, unforced. Exhale, longer, softer, fading at the end. Again, each breath seems to take less space, to move less distance, as though it no longer needs to rise fully or fall completely. It simply touches the moment and then lets it pass. The clock continues somewhere, though its sound is so faint now it may only be the shape of a rhythm that once was clear. Tick, pause, tick, pause, or something like it, or something remembered. The embers shift once, very slightly, a quiet settling that does not change their glow, but only deepens it for a moment before it returns to its steady, dim presence. The light in the room has grown so soft that it no longer defines edges. The stone walls, the floor, the window all seem to blend into one continuous surface of shadow and warmth where nothing needs to be outlined. There is no movement now beyond the smallest things. A breath, a faint glow, a distant rhythm. Again, a breath, a faint glow, a distant rhythm. Again, the body rests deeper into the chair, though the movement is not something that can be seen. It is simply known, a quiet sinking that happens without effort, without direction. There is no need to move, no need to adjust. Everything has already come to rest. The window remains, but it no longer draws attention. The night beyond it feels the same as the room itself, still, quiet, without boundary. Inside and outside begin to feel like the same place. The embers continue, their slow, patient fading, not disappearing, just softening. Their glow becomes more even, less bright in any one place, spreading into a quiet, shared warmth that holds for a while longer. Breath continues. Inhale, barely a rise. Exhale, almost nothing at all. Again, the rhythm is still there, but it is quieter now, less separate, as though it belongs not just to the body, but to the room, to the embers, to the night itself. The clock's presence fades further until it is no longer clear whether it continues or whether it has simply been absorbed into the silence. Tick, pause, or perhaps only pause. The repetition of small things remains. The embers glow, the breath moves, the stillness holds. Again, the embers glow, the breath moves, the stillness holds. Again, nothing more is needed. Nothing more appears. The room, the warmth, the quiet, they remain together, gently, steadily, as if they have all agreed to rest at the same time, in the same soft and endless night. The room grows dimmer. Though the change is so gradual, it feels less like something happening and more like something already complete. The embers in the hearth remain, but their glow has softened into a quiet, fading warmth that no longer reaches outward, only resting close to where it began. The light is low now, very low. It touches almost nothing. And yet everything is still there. The chair, the blanket, the still hands, all present, though gently folded into the quiet shadow that fills the space without weight, without edge. Breath continues. Inhale, so light it is almost not felt. Exhale, even softer, dissolving before it fully leaves. Again, the rhythm remains, though it has become something more like a suggestion than a movement. It does not rise or fall in any clear way. It simply exists, faint and steady, like the last glow of the embers. The air feels still, not empty, just still. The window no longer reflects any light. It is a quiet surface now, blending into the surrounding dark, holding the night without showing it. There is no sense of outside or inside anymore, only a shared stillness that rests everywhere at once. The embers shift once more very gently, A small glow deepens, then softens, then fades back into the same quiet presence as before. There is no sound now, not even the soft settling that once marked their change, only a silent, steady dimming. The clock, if it continues, it does so beyond notice. Its rhythm has become part of the silence itself, no longer separate, no longer heard. Tick, pause, or perhaps only the idea of it remains. The room holds, the stillness holds, everything holds. Again, the embers glow, the breath rests, the silence deepens. Again, the embers glow, the breath rests, the silence deepens. Again, the body remains completely at rest now. There's no sense of weight or position, only a quiet presence that exists without needing to be felt. The chair supports, though it is no longer something to notice. The blanket warms, though its touch has faded into the same gentle quiet as everything else. The edges of things are gone, not removed, just softened beyond distinction. The stone walls, the floor, the window, the fire, they no longer stand apart. They rest together, part of one quiet space that does not change. Breath continues. Inhale, barely there. Exhale, gone before it arrives. Again, the embers dim further. Their glow is now a soft memory of light, a faint warmth that lingers without shining. It does not flicker. It does not move. It simply remains as long as it needs to, without any urgency to stay. The night is everywhere now, not outside, not inside, just present. And in that presence, everything becomes quieter still, as if the room itself is gently closing its eyes. Not in an ending, but in a soft and endless rest. The room remains, though it is now almost entirely held within a quiet that has no edges, no center, no direction. The embers in the hearth are still there, but their glow is so faint it feels more like warmth remembered than light seen. Nothing reaches outward anymore. Nothing moves toward anything else. Everything simply is. The chair is still. The blanket is still. The hands rest, though they are no longer felt as separate from the space around them. Breath continues. Inhale, so soft it barely gathers. Exhale, so light it fades before it is known. Again, there is no clear beginning to the breath now and no clear end. It moves within the stillness, the way the last warmth rests within the embers. Quiet, continuous, without form. The air does not shift. It does not need to. It rests the way everything else rests. The window is no longer something to look toward. It has become part of the same quiet surface as the walls, as the floor, as the space itself. There is no outside. There is no inside. Only a single gentle stillness that remains unchanged. The clock is no longer heard. Its rhythm, if it continues, has dissolved completely into the silence. There is no ticking now, no pause, only a soft, unbroken quiet that holds everything within it. The embers, they remain, but only as a faint trace of warmth, something that does not glow so much as it lingers. There is no movement within them now, no shifting, no deepening, only a quiet presence that stays without effort. Again, the warmth remains, the breath rests, the silence holds. Again, the warmth remains, the breath rests, the silence holds. Again, the body is no longer something separate from the chair or from the blanket or from the room itself. It rests as part of the same stillness, held in the same quiet way. There is no need to notice anything. There is nothing to follow, nothing to hold on to. The sense of time has softened beyond recognition. There are no moments passing, no sequence to observe, only a gentle, continuous presence that does not move forward or back. Breath continues. Inhale, almost not there. Exhale, already gone. Again. The difference between one breath and the next disappears completely, leaving only a quiet, steady being that does not need to be measured. The embers grow softer still, or perhaps they remain exactly as they are. It no longer matters. The room, the warmth, the silence, all have become the same. A single, unbroken calm again. The warmth remains, the breath rests, the silence holds again. Nothing changes. Nothing needs to. And in this quiet, where everything has already settled, the night continues without shape, without sound, without end, holding all that remains in a gentle, endless stillness. The room remains, though it is no longer something that can be clearly known. It rests in a quiet so complete that nothing stands apart, nothing asks to be seen or felt or remembered. The embers have softened into the faintest warmth, something that does not glow, something that simply lingers in a way that feels both present and already gone. The chair is there, the blanket is there, but they are no longer separate. They rest within the same stillness, the same gentle quiet that holds everything without effort. Breath continues. Inhale, so soft it does not rise. Exhale, so light it does not fall. Again and again, or perhaps there is no again, only a single quiet presence that remains without movement. The air does not shift. It does not change. It rests just as it is. And the window, the walls, the floor, all have dissolved into the same soft, unbroken calm. There is no boundary now, no edge where one thing ends and another begins. Only stillness, only quiet, only a gentle, endless rest. The memory of the fire has faded. The memory of the clock has faded. The memory of sound itself has faded into something that no longer needs to be remembered. And yet, nothing is missing. Everything that was is still here, only softer, only quieter, only resting in a way that asks for nothing at all. Breath continues, or something like breath, a soft presence, a quiet rhythm without shape. There's no need to follow it, no need to notice it. It simply is. The warmth remains, but only as a feeling without location, without form. The stillness remains, but it no longer surrounds. It is everything. Again, a quiet presence, a gentle rest, a soft, endless calm. Again, a quiet presence, a gentle rest, a soft, endless calm. And slowly, even the idea of repeating begins to fade, as if the rhythm itself is dissolving into something even softer, something that no longer moves at all. Nothing begins, nothing ends, nothing changes. And within this quiet, where everything has already settled into its final softness, there is only a gentle drifting, a slow and steady dissolving into rest. No edges, no weight, no sound, only the faintest sense of being held, without knowing by what, without needing to know. And then, even that soft knowing begins to fade, like the last trace of warmth in the stone, like the last quiet breath that no longer needs to return, until there is only stillness, endless, unbroken, at rest. Where are you drifting over tonight? Let the weightlessness take over your body. If the story helped you find peace, please consider subscribing for more nightly journeys. Sleep well, traveler.